Imagine rewriting the rules of leadership before the age of 30. Imagine being elected into office, passing laws that change lives, while at the same time having a family and building a legacy. Well, imagine no more, because that is my next guest, Mr. Jesse Johnson. And today, you get the inside story. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for your leadership in this podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time, man. I know you've got a busy schedule, and you're all over the place. So you being here on this beautiful morning means a lot to me. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. How's your morning been so far?
It's been good. Yeah, I'm blessed. Yeah.
Are you a morning person?
I'm a morning person. When I get my coffee, specifically Boon Boon, I know you've had Ephraim on the show.
I have.
I get that brown sugar latte, and I'm good to go. Yeah.
Man, maybe we'll have to make a trip after this or something,
absolutely.
you know? Or
Capitol Hill.
Yeah, you know. So he actually, I don't know if you saw it, but he was one of my sponsors at an event I threw here a few months ago.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. He and his brand, and then my mom was cooking some food, but everyone was raving about their coffee and stuff. They catered for us, and I had the cup and everything, and it was a great time.
That's awesome. He's a good dude.
He is a good dude. Yeah, and if I would have known earlier, maybe I would have had that prepared or something, you know?
But, you're good. I'm going to make a trip up there after this.
You have to, man. You have to. Well, Jesse, man, we got a lot to talk about today. You have an extensive resume, as people can tell by the introduction. If you want to just kick it off, telling the audience, briefly introducing yourself to the world and a little bit about who you are.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I'm a Federal Way kid, 253, born and raised, and growing up in Federal Way, a community that has changed a lot, but has been a big part of my life, diverse community. I grew up with my parents. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, and a household full of athletes, specifically track and field. A lot of us ran track growing up. Actually, my name, Jesse Johnson, came from Jesse Owens and Michael Johnson. So my dad was a huge track and field fan, and
just put the two together.
Absolutely,
Man,
Jesse Johnson.
So you probably got some Olympic genes in you then.
I don't know about that, but I ran growing up and a huge fan. And my first couple of years at UW ran track and field, so I got to experience that. And also growing up spiritually, my grandmother and my father were big presence in my life. They instilled that in me from a young age, and I saw how they walked their life and talked the talk and walked the walk, and that had a big influence on me as well.
Definitely.
And so growing up in Federal Way High School, was an athlete. I was a pretty quiet kid, I would say. In fact, when I got elected to office, my teacher, Miss Ash, who's now the BSU advisor at Federal Way, was like, "You're one of the last students of my students I thought would have been elected because you were so quiet." Like I walked around and I was just like in my own world, and never did like ASB or leadership. But I always had this sense of what I wanted to see in the world, and I feel like I had like that instilled in me from a young age, like this sense of love for humanity, for my people, for my community. And so when I went to the University of Washington, graduated in 2008 from Federal Way, that was, of course, the year that President Obama was on the rise.
Yeah.
And that kind of sparked my interest in politics, I think, originally, even though I didn't think I was going to run. And so when I went to UW, I actually changed my major from business to poli-sci because of his rise and seeing someone that looked like me running for office. And so I got to volunteer with his campaign and that sort of thing. And that summer after my freshman year, I actually interned for Congressman Smith in D.C. and got to go to D.C. for a summer, see all the monuments, experience that on the Capitol, and that changed my life. So that really is kind of, when I look back at it, that's kind of what sparked it for me.
Yeah, and that DC's on my bucket list. Yeah, I think just because I'm DC, New York. I've never been to the East Coast, so these are all places that I want to be.
Gotta go. Yeah.
A lot of people that have been there, they're like, no, it's overrated. It's just it's a lot of people. It's this, it's that. But me, being from the West Coast, it's just my touristy self kind of comes out, and I'm like, I still want to see the monuments, where MLK did his speech and everything.
Yeah, and the cool thing is it's so close. Like, you can get to New York to DC in like 3 hours.
Take the subway or something.
Take the subway. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, wow, you volunteered for the Obama campaign, and you never met Obama though.
I never met him. Got to hear him speak at UW Stadium, Husky Stadium.
How was that?
That was pretty awesome. I was probably like 20 feet away, and he just was riveting to hear him in person. Like you hear him on TV now and that sort of thing, but when you hear him in person, it's another level of just inspiration and motivation.
Definitely. Wow. Well, you talked a little bit about being elected into office and doing that, and you're from Federal Way. You did enter politics at a very young age. In fact, you were the youngest city council member in Federal Way history, 27 at the time, right?
That's right.
So what initially sparked that interest for public service? Because similar to you, I kind of was a little bit shy too, but I feel like, people that get involved early on, yeah, they definitely could continue that into their real life. But those that are shy, those people that kind of get overlooked because they're quiet or whatever, it's all those thoughts in your head that you're thinking about, and then that timing kind of plays in place, and then eventually that comes out. What sparked that interest for you for public service initially?
Seeing my grandmother as a pastor, and she was one of few African-American pastors from the Central District, originally from Texas, in Jim Crow, Texas, and came here with her family in the 40s, raised my dad, who's one of 13 kids, and she always had this sense of community and service through her church. And she would go and volunteer at the Salvation Army and the Goodwill every single day, and I would be with her and seeing that sense of service. And I always thought, in order to really serve the community, you have to love the community first. And in order to lead the community, you have to serve the community first. And so service is a big thing for me. And so I grew up with my family serving in the community, in the church. And I think that really was the original spark. But in all honesty, when now President Trump won his first term in 2016, I was a high school counselor, college and career counselor at Highline High School. And that next day I can remember going to the school building and seeing my colleagues tear up, and the fear, especially with a lot of my immigrant colleagues and folks of color and women, and seeing the fear in their eyes. I said to myself, I need to get involved in a more direct way, and I need to finally kind of just take that jump and run for office. I had thought about it, but I felt in that moment that I was called to do it. And I talk about this with my wife all the time. That calling in that season of my life is really what kind of led me to jump in. And so a month later, I actually filed to run for city council against a 2-term Republican incumbent who's well known in Federal Way, and knocked on over 15,000 doors over an 8-month span, and raised a lot of money and ended up winning that race to be the youngest in the city's history. So that was, it was a really interesting time in my life, because I was figuring out, do I want to stay in education? Do I want to be a full-time teacher? Do I want to be a principal? And then this political thing just kind of came up, and I was called to do it, and I felt like I had to do it.
Yeah. I mean, you've had to be going through all kinds of feelings when you were knocking on you said 15,000 doors?
15,000 doors, yeah.
Man, how do you keep going, man, after door 1,000?
I went through a couple shoes, yeah. I actually have to credit now my current boss, Mike Pelliciotti, the state treasurer. He was one of the first people that kind of embraced me, because, I'm a young kid with an afro. I always said I had
you had an afro too?
I had the number 8 Kobe afro.
You're bold, bro.
I came into the local 30th Democratic meeting, and he kind of embraced me and took me under his wing, and he said, hey, to win this race, I'll support you, but to win this race, you got to get out there and knock on doors. That's how you win, grassroots. And so I took that to heart. And luckily, knowing Federal Way, knowing the community, I always say, to know a community, you have to have had trick-or-treated in that community, walk the neighborhoods. And I know, in Federal Way, you get to Marine Hills, you get to the Point, you get to these different areas in Federal Way. That's how you win the race. Redondo, where they're, these are people that are going to vote. But you also have to get to the people that have not been heard, have not been listened to, and maybe have been disenfranchised as well. If you can do two things at once, get the people that already vote to support you and look for a new voice, and to get the folks that don't vote, give them a reason why to vote. If you can do those two things, you can win a race like that. So I ended up winning by, I think, about 4.5%. So it was a tough race, but we got the job done, and I had a great team as well. So
yeah. And I mean, being someone that was older than you, more experienced than you at the time. I'm sure that felt great, like being a youngin and just being like, man, I'm 27 and I really just did this.
I had nothing to lose, right? Since my first race, I didn't know if I was gonna win. In fact, on election night, like everyone was upstairs at my mom's house, like waiting to see the results on TV. And I was down in my room, just kind of like, I'll just wait to see whether it's applause or whether it's like, ah, dang, just, he tried. And it was kind of quiet at first. And then I walked up and everyone was literally shocked that I had won. Like, there wasn't like this. They were like, we just thought you was just trying to do this thing just to get out there, and you won the race. And they're just like, wow. So my family was pretty shocked, but it was a cool moment.
Were you shocked?
I think I was shocked in the fact that amount of people would literally bubble in my name on a ballot. But I think the conversations I had at the doors led me to believe that folks were looking for a new direction, a new voice, representing young voters, working families. There had never been someone under the age of 30 on the city council. In fact, and later we'll talk about it, when I got to the state legislature, I was the youngest there too. And there was just not a lot of youth representation at the time at any level of politics. We're talking 2017. So at that time, there were 4 black legislators in the entire 147 legislature.
That's crazy.
City council, obviously, lack of representation. So when I had those conversations at the doors, it was like people were looking for change, not only like physically change, but like in the new way of thinking as well. Like, how do we get out into the community more? And people would say, you're the first person to knock on my door in 10 years in the community. So folks just weren't getting out there to that level, I think, and knocking on doors and talking with and having those conversations, even if we disagree, but having those conversations and being willing to put yourself out there.
That and I feel like just the time we are in right now, we don't even have to say it. Everyone knows what we're talking about. It's that conversation piece that's being kind of ripped away. It's like, can we agree to disagree? And can we even have that dialogue in the first place?
Yeah.
And I think when you're door knocking, I mean, you come across people that will support you without you even saying a word, and then people that be like, no, I disagree with you, but I'm still willing to talk with you anyways.
Right.
And
I can still remember, and I'll tell you a quick story. I had a conversation with an older white gentleman, obviously Republican. I think he had a Trump flag or something. I walked up to his door and he's just like, who's this kid coming up to my door? And then after about a couple minutes of like me kind of nodding my head, listening to his views, I realized that maybe from a national perspective, we disagreed on a lot. But from a local perspective, all he wanted was to be heard and to be listened to, and, basically to have a quality of life in the community where he felt safe, where he felt like he could get to work without a ton of traffic and running over a pothole. And, he wanted to see young people in our community thrive and have opportunities. So we had a lot more in agreement from a local perspective than maybe from a national, when we were talking about the partisan political duopoly that we have, partisan politics, right? So,
Republican, Democrat.
And I always say, like, regardless of party, we just need courageous leadership willing to have conversations. And that's what I witnessed in talking with him.
That's powerful, man. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's what we need more of, right? It's like there's just so much polarity on each side, and it's like, man, let's come together right now. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to do it. So I'm not surprised at all that you've been elected. Yeah. Just by the way you presented it and that message, a message of love and kind of unity and being open, that's real good, man. That's real good. Staying on the topic of youth and you being the youngest member in state legislative, that comes with a lot of, even me being a youngster in the podcasting world, that comes with a lot of challenges as well as opportunities, because people could look at you and be like, hey, he's a youngin', let me give him some wisdom, some advice. But at the same time, a lot of challenges because of that lack of expertise, maybe. Were there any defining moments that you remember during that process, especially when you first were elected, that you were like, man, like you were just like, it was like a moment of, dang, I'm young. Like if I had more expertise, I would know how to solve this or do that. Do you have any of those kind of moments?
Well, I still remember my first day going to Olympia. It was actually only my second time ever at the Capitol. I had went maybe on a field trip as a young person, and then my second time was being an elected official. And I got past the security, and they're like, so who are you the assistant for? Or who are you, working for up here? And I'm like, I'm the new member, Representative Johnson out of the 30th District. And they're like, they had to like look at their chart, like, wait, is that? Oh, that is him. Like, and so I still remember that. It was funny. We laughed about it afterwards. But I think that kind of was a microcosm of my experience. Like folks were kind of wondering, like, who is this guy? What's he doing here? What's his, role? What has he done? What's his experience? And then it was an interesting time because when I look back, I started December of 2019 and into January 2020. Obviously, 2 months later, the pandemic hits.
Yep.
We're thrust into an economic recession. Then we have the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and locally Manny Ellis, and I was thrust into a leadership role really soon because of that and because of a need to represent, I think a community and population that wasn't being represented in marginalized communities. And, I don't think I was actually as prepared as probably I wanted to be, but I think that it made me prepared because I had to be, right? And so, when you represent a community that has been hated, oppressed, degraded over a long period of time, like you have to be ready for those moments. And I knew, once that had happened, that the community was going to ask a Black legislator to represent whatever was going to come next around police reform, accountability. And so we only had 4 members at the time, and me and Representative Intamin out of Kent, Senator Nobles were the 3 that kind of rose our hand and said, we'll take this on. And so we were the 3 kind of thrust into the spotlight at that time. Yeah. So it was a big moment. And I just wanted to represent my community well. First thing for me is getting out and talking with community, like what needed to be done. How do we make sure that this is a trusted legislation and policy making? And so I got out into the community, had barbershop talks, town halls, did it the way that I only know how, which is grassroots, right?
Do you still have an afro? I'm just picturing that afro during this whole time.
I still had an afro. It was kind of more of a free form, look by this time. Yeah. Now, obviously, I have locks and 5 years later, but, I started growing it out when everything shut down. And but everything was kind of shut down. But my barber, he's a good friend of mine, Lamont, and he was like, man, we should do something in the community where people feel safe, right? Let's do it in the barbershop. So we started talking about what was going on, all the protests nationally, and we were like, yeah, all that is going to happen. It's needed. It's necessary. But legislatively, how do we get something in place that's never been done before? And that's where I met a lot of families impacted by police violence through the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability that had been formed during the, I think it was the De-Escalate Washington campaign 2 years prior. And so met a lot of families and started working on the bills that summer of 2020. And that kind of led into the legislation comprehensive legislation that we know now is some of the most comprehensive in the entire country that we passed in 2021.
Yeah. It was, you said December 2019 you started. And it was just event after event after event in 2020 that happened that just kept pushing you towards more and more leadership, more and more on your plate. Where it's like, Jesse, you got to step up. There's this, that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's similar to me too, because, and a lot of people know this, but coming out of COVID, I've always wanted to kind of be part of the BSU at my campus, the Black Student Union, and coming out of it, fall of 2021, when we were finally back on campus after a year and a half, almost 2 years. I ended up being president. I became president. Yeah, I didn't really run for it because I was on the board before. The year prior, I was kind of outreach and retention officer, but it required me to step up because a lot of the clubs had died because a lot of the leadership was changing and people were stepping away, whatever. They didn't want to do online. And it's just those moments that kind of force you to kind of rise up. Yeah. And then you find yourself there a year or two later and you're like, man, I kind of enjoyed this, right?
Right. It's true. I mean, I always say, like, if you enjoy the work, but you get tired in the work, that's okay. Just don't get tired of the work. When you get tired of the work, it's probably time to do something else. But you can get tired in the work. That means you're working hard. You're doing tough things that need to be done. And so, I started working on, obviously, which came to be House Bill 1054, which banned chokeholds, no-knock warrants, limited the use of military equipment and tear gas, and then House Bill 1310, which was a statewide standard to finally prioritize less lethal options and deprioritize deadly force, which unfortunately had become far too often a case with folks in our community. And then House Bill 1140, which was for young people. So this was the My Chance Dunlap-Gittens bill. My Chance was a young man that was killed after a police search in 2017 in Seattle Public Schools. And so he had nothing to do with the incident, but out of fear, he ran from the officer, was shot in the back and killed. And so brought forth this bill so that whenever a young person encounters police and is going to be questioned or searched, they have to have access to an attorney first. So the police officer has to hand them a phone to call an attorney to talk through the details of what they may be charged with before answering any questions from that cop. And that's a constitutional right, but a lot of young people, you know, Miranda rights are a thing, but we don't know because we're in this state of fear sometimes when we encounter police for obvious reasons. And so that the onus is on the officer to say, hey, you can talk to an attorney first before I even question you. And so that was put into place out of honor for him.
That's real good. Wow. I'll be honest, man. I never heard of him. I never heard about that story. But that's very tragic, and we hear too many of those things. And I think police and the topic of police has been a big thing since George Floyd. Well, even before that, actually. And it's just, I'm optimistic about the future. I think I'm very optimistic that things will get better, and especially seeing people like you in leadership. You know, it gives me a little sense of hope. Man, we've already kind of talked about community impact a little bit, you know, you said you worked on the police accountability side, juvenile reform a little bit, as well as something that we haven't mentioned, housing inequalities on the socioeconomic side of things. Between these three, are there anything, or is one of them stand out more to you than the other? Is one of them like kind of give you a little bit more passion, a little bit more drive to kind of work on that compared to the other two?
I think for me, actually, the thing that I'm most proud of in the legislature was working on apprenticeship pathways for young people, something we haven't discussed yet. But growing up in a household where my dad was a 40-year contractor in the trades, painting by profession or by trade, and I saw him get up at 4 a.m. every day and make a living for our family. He only had a high school diploma, but he was able to make a pretty good living for us. And that sense of like, you can go out and do something you can be proud of through the trades. And so fast forward to city council, I helped pass a apprenticeship ordinance for young people where city projects had to have 15% had to be apprentices on the job in our city. And then in the state legislature, I took that energy to come up with the Federal Way High School pre-apprenticeship program, which is sort of a running start in the trades program for juniors and seniors to experience all the trades from electrical to welding to carpentry to painting, sheet metal. And so they get to experience all these trades in 2 years. They get their OSHA certification, their flagger certification. They get to go out and interview and meet with people in the unions and private companies. And then, you know, once they graduate, you know, they get to select the trades. We even did like this trade signing day, right? So similar to athletes where they get to pick the hat of the college they're going to.
Yep. It's televised and everything.
Exactly. So they got to select if they're going to which, you know, trade they're going to get to go to. So that was probably my most proud thing that I've done because, again, it's with young people. That's my passion coming from the education background that I have. And it's something where it's a direct pathway to wealth generation for communities that have not had that due to systemic inequities, right? And so, you know, these are tools that young people can get to become a carpenter, to become an electrical worker, to work in the maritime industry, whatever the case may be, in engineering, and have a pretty good job they can be proud of regardless if they go to college. And make money and raise a family. So I'm probably most proud of that.
Interesting.
Obviously, police reform, housing is super important. But now I'm trying to elevate that program this year. I'm actually meeting with folks to go on a trip to the UK next spring. The UK is like way beyond the US in terms of getting young people into the trades in a seamless, like streamlined fashion without having to go through barriers, right? And over here, what happens sometimes is we get put on wait lists because we don't have experience or we don't have seniority. And then young people end up doing something else in that time because they're just not getting job placements. Well, let's create a seamless transition into jobs right away. And so we're going to the UK with a number of young people and community partners and labor partners next spring to study their work through a grant. So I'm excited about that, to take some young people out there and also get that study abroad experience that a lot of times, like I never did study abroad, but a lot of times we don't get to travel as young people, especially young Black and brown people. So I'm going to take a group of them over there to experience that.
Man, I'm going to have to tag along on that trip, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's over at Oxford. It's going to be cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, when you're talking about the trades, you reminded me like 2 days ago or something, I was on YouTube and I saw the title of the video, and I didn't search it up or anything, but it said something, young men in particular are going into the trades more and less into college recently.
That's right.
And it made me think, it's like, why is that? Like, why is it that young men are going more into the trades? Is it just because affordability, you know?
Yeah.
Compared to young women that are still on the rise and more of them are going to college?
I think skilled trades in particular, we find a lot of us do like to work with our hands from a young age. Even my 4-year-old, I see him, using a drill
he's already,
at 4 years old. Yeah. So I kind of see that skill in him. But I think, also it provides just that optionality, right? Like if you want to go to college, you can do that too, right? You can actually go to college, get your degree in business, become an entrepreneur, have your own business. But if you know the trade, you can turn that trade into a business. And if you can do both, that's even better. And so I'm trying to figure out a way where our young men in particular, but also young women can do that at the same time. Like how can they get college credit while they're on the job working, right? And so
it's like two birds with one stone, pretty much type of thing.
Exactly.
But at the same time though, Jesse, I think especially in our communities, in the Black and brown communities too, there is a big push. I think I feel like the parents got to be really educated on this too, because, my parents really pushed me to do college. Like we come here from Eritrea, and really college is kind of the only thing. Like the trades and stuff it would get you the money and the skills, but I think they might see that as less than compared to getting that college experience. So how do we also incorporate the parents, you know what I mean, into that?
I think from a national perspective, we have to change the way it's looked at. Like the stereotype around a lot of blue collar ever since I think like World War II or something has been that's less than in a way than white collar jobs. But what's happening with AI, what we see is AI has taken over a lot of those white collar jobs. And so we need to be prepared to have this new wave of blue collar workers as the baby boomer generation's retiring out and those jobs are becoming available and actually make good money. And they're having to be, you have to go out and recruit people from other countries because we don't have the workforce here. I think that's going to be the new wave of getting our kids prepared. So you're right, the education process, even as early as middle school, like by high school, you kind of have to know, you got to have a plan, at least by like sophomore, junior year. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. So we need to have our kids prepared, like entering high school. It doesn't mean that they can't change their mind. Obviously, you can change your mind, but at least having an idea of what you might want to do.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, man. Well, we're going to kind of switch over to the topic of balancing roles, a little bit of family. You got 2 kids, a wife. Being a public servant, being a husband, being a father. I mean, these are 3 different hats that you wear. And I'm assuming you probably still run.
Sometimes. Every now and then when I can.
Yeah. Man, how do you balance all these 3 things, man? Because I think a big thing of today is people are in a state of hurry, in a state of rush, because they're trying to accomplish all these things at the same time while still keeping their sanity. How do you do it, Jesse?
Well, I heard Michelle Obama say, especially in a relationship, you can have everything, but not at once. Every season of life has to prioritize usually one person in a relationship. If you try to do both, it's extremely difficult. And my wife and I, we've been together 11 years. We just had our anniversary, 7 years married. We met at UW. She's actually a medical resident at Kaiser and Swedish in Capitol Hill here in Seattle.
Nice.
And so she has her own thing, her own career. But what we try to do is when I was running for the legislature, that was kind of my time. Like she would support me. She would be out there on the campaign trail. She was working as a nursing assistant at a local elementary school. Mm-hmm. And then when I decided to leave and kind of, a lot of people were surprised, but I'm like this. I'm not attached to a position. I'm not attached to positionality. I'm attached to freedom and justice for my people, whatever that looks like in that season of life. Mm-hmm. And I knew in that 2020 through 22 time, like I needed to be in elected space so I can get things done. And now I'm supporting her in her journey, and I definitely know I want to get back in, but it's really a balance, right? You got to be able to, whatever season of life you're in, you got to be able to listen to that call, like what is needed. And it's always family for me. I think the most revolutionary thing we can do is to be the best fathers, husbands, community members we can be first and foremost. If we're not doing that right, then, it's hard to do everything else, right?
Oh, 100%.
So I think, I prioritize my kids, 2 boys, 4 and 2 years old, and making sure they get to where they need to go. And obviously they're young, they're going to have schedules soon. And so that's going to make things even busier. But, I think my wife and I try to do a good job at prioritizing them and then, making that time for us as well. But you got to keep your mental health together. And at least for me, physical health and mental health are tied together. So making sure I'm working out, hiking, getting that vitamin D, when I can in Seattle before the gray hits. But,
we got some sun today, so we'll get some today.
Exactly. And I'm gonna take advantage and walk around. But, you got to make sure your mental health and your physical health is together to be able to be the best person for everyone else in the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really think about this because, eventually down the line, me having my own family and stuff, and it's like, man, how do I balance it? But it's really kind of what you said. It's like, man, you put that time into it, and you just try your best and do your best. And I'm spiritual side of things kind of plays a role into that too yourself, right?
It does. Spiritually, and I'm getting better at going to church. I grew up going to church every Sunday, and I think during college I kind of got away from it. But I'm back in trying to, get to church and serve the church. But spiritually, like prayer, meditation, doing all the things you can to, be your best self, the best version of yourself. I try to do that. And spending time with family, travel, right? Like all of that is super important. Try to go on at least 1 or 2 trips a year with the family. And just get out and experience life, meet people, enjoy.
There we go. Well, Jesse, we are at the tail end of the podcast. At this point of the podcast, just because both you and I think our audiences is the younger generation, is the younger people, even for me too. And so what advice for younger people today that want to lead, that maybe want to go for an elected office, that may want to become the BSU president, a counselor, maybe president one day, whatever it may be, and they want to create that change, especially the change that we need to see in 2025.
Right.
What advice would you give to those people that are embarking on that, and any kind of wisdom you'd give them before they take that first step?
Well, I actually get this question a lot, especially from young people, and I think one of the ways we've kind of gotten away from purpose, and I always talk about purpose, like being intentional about whatever your purpose in life is now with social media and everything, everyone kind of wants this brand. They want to have like this market strategy brand for themselves, whether they want to be an influencer or a business person or whatever they're going to decide to do in life. But I really think it goes back to having a cause. Like what is something that brings you purpose in life that you're willing to live and die for, that you want to see in the world. And that can start from something as simple as walking to a coffee shop and experiencing your community and meeting people, right? So I talked about Boon Boona. I go in there, you get inspired by the Black diaspora art, your good vibes, you get the beans straight from the motherland, right? Yeah. And so that tells me about myself. I value my community. I value my identity, being a Black man. I value history. I value other people's identity and perspective. That can tell you a lot, just a simple task like that. And I think sometimes we get caught up in, we got to do something. And the better question is, who do you want to become rather than what you need to do next? Who do you want to become? What kind of person do you want to be, right? So, I think for me, it's like trying to identify what I want to become in life and who I want to become in life first and foremost. And for me, that's freedom and justice for my community and whatever walk of life I'm in. And so I kind of have this thing where I talk about, I love water, right? Like going out and sitting by the water. Water is constantly in motion. It's something that never is stagnant, and it's always moving forward. And I think, you know, if we can be a wave in our community or in the world, do that. Be a wave for positive change. But if you can only be a ripple at that time, do that, and then collaborate with other ripples and be a wave, right? But I think in every season in your life, you can have that choice to either move forward or move backward. And I think it's always, for me, about moving forward, even in this vast ocean of uncertainty we live in, politically, socially, economically. We always have to be moving forward and figuring out what is our purpose in that moment.
Yeah. Always keep it moving. Always keep it moving. Because if we stop, then
That's right.
we're not making that impact that we need to make in the world and that the world needs to see.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Jesse, man, where can people connect with you and find you on social media, maybe get a hold of you or whatever? And any last words you want to throw out there as well?
Well, last words wise, I think, you know, be yourself. Be unapologetically you, no matter who you are. Because representation does matter in this world, no matter if other people don't believe it. It matters. So be you. Somebody's taking notice of that. Folks can find me at Real Jesse Johnson on Instagram, Jesse Elijah Johnson on Facebook, but I'm always available. I do plan to get back into politics at some point, so hopefully I can join the show again when that happens and talk about whatever role I'm going to be in at that time. But I'm just excited to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Definitely. Thank you, Jesse. And I hope everyone enjoyed this awesome episode. Catch Jesse on Instagram. And I hope people took away some golden nuggets from this. Subscribe. Hit that like button. Share this with somebody that you think could benefit from this podcast and from the advice, especially that Jesse just gave away. So a lot of golden nuggets there. Thank you guys so much, and continue to stay tuned as season 6 rolls on The Black Experience. Till next time, y'all. Peace. What is up, y'all? Thank you so much for tuning in to that episode. Make sure to click the subscribe, follow button, as well as the bell to get notified on all my new content that is coming out every Wednesday and every other day. And make sure to click that link in the description down below to get access to all my socials and any other platforms that I have my podcast on. And until next time, y'all, peace.